It's Dave Rettelberger here from the Schottenstein Center and Nationwide Arena. Time for our weekly check-in with Gary, the Arena Guy. Arena Guy, how's it
Hey,
going?
Dave. I'm great. How are you doing?
Good. I see you've got your guitar there.
Yeah, actually, well, I can go into more detail in a minute. Yes, I have my guitar, and you got yours too.
Yeah. So we'll get into. Last week we talked about drummers. This week we're going to talk about the greatest guitar player of all time. We have a definitive, unarguable answer, right?
Yeah, such an easy question.
Before we get that, though, big news. We have an event at Nationwide Arena.
Can you believe it?
I know, right?
Very, very exciting. We haven't had an event at Nationwide Arena since March 8th.
Dan and Shay.
Dan and Shay.
Yeah,
So
that was awesome. And
I saw each other face to face.
I know it has been a while, right? I
Yeah.
forget that. So why don't you break the breaking event news? Right here it is.
All right, Thursday, May 28th at Nationwide Arena. Yeah, the Red Cross Blood Drive is happening at Nationwide Arena. All the details at nationwidearena.com. But this is a very important thing, especially now with everything that's going on in the world. And we're kind of joking about leading into it, but the actual event, the blood drive, is very, very important. So that's very cool. We've got that happening at Nationwide Arena. We're so happy to be able to be a part of that and to contribute to everything that's going on. And please, if you can, take part of that. Again, May 28th at Nationwide Arena, the Red Cross Blood Drive.
Yeah, one of the great things about holding it at the arena is we do have the space, right? We have plenty of space for them to spread out. And, through the last couple of months, I know there has been, the Red Cross talks about shortages, but, it's been real, people have been hesitant. But now there's a great opportunity to go back and contribute and help out. And like you said, those details all they're on their homepage right there at nationwidearena.com. So while we're talking serious stuff, let's talk about some music news from this past week. The big story, of course, being the loss of the legendary, the iconic, as you and I often argue, who is iconic. No doubt about this one, Little Richard.
Yeah, it's an overused word, iconic or legend, that sort of thing. But in this case, you know what? He called himself the architect of rock and roll, and I think he nabbed it. Little Richard. We lost Little Richard this week, and it was one of those that felt really, really sad of his passing because, you and I are both huge music fans. As you can tell, music is a big part of my life in addition to what we do for a career and with the crowd that you have in the background.
Yes.
There are some of those that started it all, and Little Richard was definitely one of those.
For sure. And I don't know, did you ever have the chance to see him live?
I did not. Do you want me to tell the story real quick?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
In my previous life, I worked at the arena at the University of Illinois. And in between that and coming here to Columbus, I had my own radio show called Gary O'Brien and Friends. And I interviewed performers and musicians and actors every day on the radio. And I had an opportunity to interview Little Richard. And I will tell you that I never get nervous talking to a performer. It's just something I feel comfortable doing, and I could usually do it off the top of my head without a lot of research, even though I was well researched. But when I had the opportunity to do Little Richard, I actually don't remember any time that I was actually nervous. And even intimidated, because you know how flamboyant Little Richard was. It was part of who he was. And
bigger than life. Yeah,
larger than life, outspoken. He'd tell you to shut up. He was all that kind of stuff, and thought, man, this is going to be a tough interview. He's just going to talk about how he was the architect of rock and roll and how he is the reason Paul McCartney is successful and all that kind of stuff, and Jimi Hendrix. But he couldn't have been sweeter. He was the nicest. Really? And he was talking to me on his car phone. And back then, I guess it was a car phone. And he was driving through the mountains, I think around Tennessee or somewhere, and he was on his way to visit his sister. And we were having this great conversation. It wasn't even an interview, it was a conversation. And we were talking about the old hits and all this stuff, and he was just such a sweet, kind, flamboyant guy. And at one point, the connection dropped, totally lost. I was like, oh no, he called me he did not want to give out his number, so I didn't have his phone number, so I couldn't call him back. And I thought, oh man, right in the middle of the story of Lucille, the conversation drops out, and thought, well, this is over now. And 2 minutes later, the phone rings, and it's Little Richard. He called
Oh,
me.
he called back.
I was so grateful. And we finished our conversation. It was amazing. He was a super guy. He did a couple of IDs, kind of liners as they call them, for me, and super nice guy. So then he invited us to the show, and he was playing a show in Illinois, and so all excited, good to see Little Richard. I love seeing the legends, and so I got there about 6:30. So an empty parking lot, no sign of life at all. And I'm thinking, what in the world? I know the concert was today, and found out, and the tickets were at will call, so I didn't have a ticket to refer to. Found out it was a rare 3 o'clock matinee. I missed the whole.
A 3 o'clock matinee.
Yeah, on a Saturday. I just assumed it was a 7 or 8 o'clock show.
Right, you've glanced at the ticket, you probably think it says 8 o'clock, right?
Yeah. And so I didn't have a ticket to look to, and I missed it, and I'm so, still to this day,
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
Myself up because I missed seeing Little Richard, and shortly after that concert, he retired. And he lived in a hotel in Nashville. He spent most of his time in a wheelchair. He wasn't wearing his big wig. You hardly could recognize him for the past 5-10 years or so. But man, that's my Little Richard story, and it's probably one. I've had so many blunders in my life, but one of the biggest is missing a Little Richard concert.
Oh, I did get to see him live once, and it wasn't a full show from him, but it was at the concert for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So back in, I think it was '95 when they were doing the grand opening for the Rock Hall. They did a big star-studded concert there up in Cleveland at the stadium, and got to see Little Richard. He came out and did, Tutti Frutti, and
oh my gosh!
But it was just enough, right? Where I was just like, you knew you were in the presence of a legend, and it was so glad I got to see a couple.
You got chills. I could talk about Little Richard for an hour based on that conversation and some of the historical aspects, and maybe sometime we can do that on our audio podcast. But a true legend, and I knew his health wasn't good, but I was really saddened to hear that news. Yeah, a real legend for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, speaking of a legend, another a big music story from this past week was, Brian May from Queen. Yeah. Talking about how he doesn't see a sequel coming out for Bohemian Rhapsody. And I remember that when we first talked about Bohemian Rhapsody on the podcast, right? One of the things we said was they could do a sequel here, but I think he's not sure that it has the uplifting ending that the first one had. But I kind of think it does, right? Because there's a triumphant story to be told. Are you surprised by that news at all?
I kind of was, only because there was so much talk that a sequel or another version of that, or the continuing of the story, or another part of the story, whatever, would be taking place. And when I first heard it, a year or two ago, that they were thinking about it based on the success of Bohemian Rhapsody, I thought, well, that's crazy. What can they do? It could never match up with it. But after seeing what Dexter Fletcher, I'm not feeling like that's his right name, but the director of that also directed Rocket Man. And after seeing what he did with Rocket Man, I thought, well, maybe anything's possible. So I guess I was kind of surprised that he doesn't think it would work. And I kind of wonder if it would. And sometimes you should leave. It's a classic rock movie. Sometimes you should leave something that's classic alone.
Just let it be.
And that's speaking words of wisdom. So, and just let it be, because a lot of times the sequels, maybe The Godfather is the exception to the rule, but the sequels always get watered down with each one. Not always, but a lot of the time. And
they struck gold with that first one.
Yeah,
that's good for me.
They're talking about doing a continuation on Rocket Man as well, and I'm thinking, anyone who knows me knows I'm a diehard Elton John fan. Part of me would really like to see that. Part of me thinks just let it be also. But you don't know. The creativity of both of those films, they're both biopics in a way. Certainly Bohemian Rhapsody and Rocket Man for a certain part of Velton's life, but they were so different and so unique that I'm almost curious to see what they might come up with.
Yeah,
So,
you know, I'm sure we'd enjoy it, and half of it is just enjoying the great music and getting to hear it in a theater. We talked about this, you know, at the time, but when you get to see theater or music, hear the music in a big room, right? And an arena, obviously being the biggest room, you know, there's something that just it brings it to life. So
yeah.
I would go see I'd go see Bohemian Rhapsody Part 7 at this point. So
Well, I would too, in a theater. But you mentioned what's that?
yeah, right. You remember those? Remember Places? Places were great.
Places. Now the Academy Awards are considering allowing movies this year that are released straight to streaming because there aren't any theaters to show movies in. So
Now, speaking of TV and music, I hear rumors because I have inside sources that you are irritated with one of your favorite shows, American Idol, as they've been going live. What's the
oh my
scoop there?
gosh, I love American Idol. I love American Idol. I really do.
More than anybody I've ever met.
It's my guilty pleasure show. You know, there are lots of reasons why a lot of people don't like it. I like it. It's fun. I like the original version on Fox because there was a whole process to it. Now with this version, I don't know what they're afraid of. I don't know if there are some ratings reasons or maybe the coronavirus has changed their formatting a little bit. Not so much the formatting, but the process. But since it's been back in ABC, they have like sped through it. They spend so much time on the audition process. And then once you get your top 40, they speed through it. So they had 40, they cut it down to 20. Then they cut it down to 10. Last week, they cut it down to 7. And then this Sunday is the finale.
Wow.
7. So 40, 20, 10, 7, 1. And it used to be they would have like 20 or whatever. They would have the bigger numbers and they'd eliminate whole groups. And then they would maybe have 20 and they would cut it down to the top, I think it was the top 12 males and females. And then when they got down more, they would eliminate sometimes 2 a week. And then eventually it would just be 1. And you could see them grow and you could see them, the progression of these kind of raw kids from high school or college age kids, you know, just auditioning and then getting this coaching and getting better with the experience and everything and really watch it. You know, Jennifer Hudson, I think she finished 7th and she would not even, maybe she'd make the top 7, but I don't know. It's just, they're speeding through it so much. It's like, it's going to be over on Sunday.
Well,
and
you know, that was part of the joy was getting to know. I haven't watched in several seasons, but part of the joy was getting to know the contestants. I mean,
yeah,
otherwise it's just the singing competition, right? You got to know and you would cheer for Kelly or Justin or
yeah,
or
you don't
Clay.
have time to get really connected. Another, my last point is, and this is just kind of a side note, they're performing from their living rooms or their homes. Every one of these kids, oddly enough, have the most beautiful homes.
You wonder why I'm using a virtual backdrop, right?
Yeah. So I know that Idol sent them all some lighting and things because you see it, and they sent maybe some staging and all that. But yeah, they all look like they have very good lives, and they're just kids.
Yeah, we get it. It's funny because even like when they were doing the Disney family sing along they aired on Mother's Day, I watched that, and you're looking at some of these celebrities' homes, and you're just like, I'm so. And no matter what your house looks like, right? You're just so tired of these walls at this point.
I know, exactly. I love the late night talk shows, but I'm kind of tired of the living room basement type stuff too. But yeah. This Sunday for the finale, though, Lionel Richie is going to sing "We Are the World" for the first time since it came out in the '80s as part of the Live Aid USA for Africa.
That was such a huge moment in
Says
music.
it.
That was
What's
awesome.
that?
I said that was just such a huge moment in music when that happened.
Yeah, and so he's going to perform it. Thinking that the timing is right with what's going on. So that'll be one of the highlights. Katy Perry with her "Baby Bump" is going to perform her new single. And Luke Bryan's going to perform too, and I guess a whole bunch of other special guests. So it could be fun, but boy, they sped through it. I can't believe it's over already.
Yeah, that's crazy. That is crazy. Hey, speaking of crazy, we're crazy to tackle this subject. It was a real hot button on our social media accounts when we posted. You know, it was. I had 8 pictures, and then I had 12, and then there were 16 at one point, and there was just too many. And so we try to, you know, who's the greatest guitarist of all time, right? Who is the greatest guitarist of all? And there's, you know, and no matter who we posted, it was a travesty because we forgot to not include somebody's picture. And it's definitely a very hot topic. Before we get started on that, though, tell me about that little guitar you got behind you.
Oh, this guitar. You know, I'm a music and entertainment collector, and
Not a performer.
I'm not a performer, as we talked about before. I cannot carry a tune, yet I love music. So that's kind of an interesting thing. But I've probably got about, I think, 5 autographed guitars. And since we're talking about the great guitarists, this guitar here is autographed by maybe one of the most revered guitarists of all time, Les Paul.
Oh, wow.
Who had a lot of hits in the 40s and the 50s with his wife, Mary Ford. And then she retired, and he went on to have a solo career. And he's a guitarist that Eddie Van Halen and some of the great guitarists of today admired. And up until his death, he would perform every week in New York City at a club. And some of these great guitarists, Slash, and Eddie Van Halen and others would go see him. Steve Miller Band, Les Paul was his godfather. And so lots of influence there. So I thought I just would bring this guitar down as we start a conversation about the guitarist. But Les Paul is definitely an influence. Tell me about your guitar.
This guitar has been autographed by no one. I got it for my wife about 20 years ago.
Yeah. Do you
she
play?
wanted to learn how to play the guitar, right? So I got her this acoustic guitar, and then we got her lessons, and she was playing. And shortly after that, she got pregnant. And so as she got further along the pregnancy, the guitar would get further and further away, and she couldn't really reach around it anymore. She stopped playing. Now it is horribly out of tune. But we're talking about once our music shops get open again, we're going to get it restrung and give it to our oldest son, because I think he's got an interest. So
I think you should learn how to play.
These strings will sing again.
Yeah. Well, you need to learn how to play so you can use your boys and have your boys join you and have a family band, kind of like a Partridge Family type thing.
Absolute Partridge Family, yes, absolutely.
Because I know you've got drums. Your boys play the
trumpet.
Yeah,
trumpet, piano lessons. We're music all the time in this house. Yeah. So guitar. Let's talk guitar. Let's talk the greatest guitarist of all time. And I'm just going to take it off the table right now.
All right.
I got to take Prince off the table, right? I mean, I'm not saying he's off the table as the greatest, but I have to put him out there, right? Because you're right, that's there, and I'm a big Prince fan, and if you ever go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and you get to see that performance on this movie cinema they have there, where you see Prince do a little Beatles there at one of the induction ceremonies where he does "While My Guitar Gently," and just kills it, right? He's an all-time great.
He's an all-time great, and I guess you'd go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but you could even do it easier because it was my #1 pick. Every day I miss a couple of days here and there, but every day I tried to include a classic concert clip on the Arena Guy Facebook page, and that was my very first clip. While My Guitar Gently Weeps. Got Tom Petty, Jeff Lynne, a whole bunch of other guys, and then Prince.
Donnie Harrison.
Donnie Harrison, yeah. Our buddy, right?
Yeah, it was great. Who did he open for? He opened for ELO, right?
ELO. And so the Jeff Lynne connection, of course, the Traveling Wilburys with Petty and Lynn and George Harrison. But that was my very first one because I get chills every single time watching that and get Prince's guitar solo. And that's why I have Prince here showcase Purple Rain, because he's got an incredible guitar solo in Purple Rain and some other songs on this album as well. He is very underrated as a guitarist, I think, as a whole, except by diehard fans. He played every instrument on I don't know how many albums, you might know, but there are some albums where he played every single instrument. But he's a great, great guitarist. Even Eric Clapton said he was the best guitarist out there. And that video clip is worth all of our time talking today. It is when I went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame a couple years ago for the very first time, it was like a rock and roll church. And seeing that clip on that big screen there, I've never felt chills as much as anything. So,
and it was when you got to see Prince live, but he would play guitar a lot more live than he did on the albums.
Rub it in.
It was a religious experience
Yeah.
for many of us. So
Never
that
saw
said,
Prince
you
live.
mentioned Clapton, right? Clapton, all-time great. Who else is on your list?
The guitar god, Eric Clapton. Well, this is really a tough question because, you go back to like the 50s and the 60s, you've got guitarists that maybe a lot of people don't know except diehard music fans, but like Scotty Moore and James Burton played on all the Elvis Presley and Ricky Nelson albums back when Ricky Nelson was kind of like a rockabilly type thing. And they were awesome. Dwayne Eddy and some of those guys were some of the first great rock guitarists of the time. And then, you can go off in blues. When I was in college, I actually saw Muddy Waters perform.
Oh, wow.
Talk about a legend. And, you talk about him and B.B. King and others. I mean, incredible. How do you choose? And then more current blues guitarists like Robert Cray, amazing. But for the sake of this conversation, we're talking about current modern day. And I kind of came up with 5 that are my favorites. You can argue who are the best. I have no idea who are the best. I don't really know. But I know that, of course, I will throw out Davey Johnston from the Elton John Band because he's been with them almost 30 years and he's legendary, iconic.
He has a great guitar.
Just performed his 3,000th show with Elton John last week.
Wow.
3,000 shows. And my only complaint about Elton is that he doesn't give Davey enough guitar solos during some of his songs because Davey is so good that he gets some, but I feel like there could be some extended guitar solos in some of the songs to showcase that. But besides him, because that's a natural, and people will say, well, if I didn't say that, why didn't you say Davey? Think of Jimmy Page, of course.
Yep.
And I have to tell you, and don't mean to like name drop, but we both do when we have a chance. Had a chance to meet and hang out with Jimmy Page for a while. There was a group that...
Hang on now.
I know.
You had a chance to hang out with Jimmy Page?
I did, yes. He was in a group called The Firm. Do you remember that?
Right, absolutely. Radioactive.
Yeah, exactly. And he wasn't, and Paul Rogers from Bad Company, they had a group called The Firm, and, their solo careers weren't doing anything, and so they decided to form this band. It was going to be the next Led Zeppelin or whatever. And we did them when I was at the University of Illinois. And Jimmy Page, probably hung out with him for 15 or 20 minutes, which in rock and roll time is an eternity.
That's like a month.
I know. Because a lot of times it's like, hello, how you doing? Hey, it's awesome to meet you. I'll catch you later. Have a great show. So happy you were here. He was so cool, and I should have brought the photo so I could hold it up, but I've got a photo where it looks like, how the 70s were maybe a decade of excess with rock and roll. I look like I was the one that took part in, my eyes were half closed and everything, and he's smiling. Like I was the big partier in the photo. But it was so cool to meet Jimmy Page. Super nice guy. But man, you'd be hard-pressed to find someone that didn't say Jimmy Page wasn't one of the greatest guitarists of all time.
No, he was on my list. And I'll never forget the first time I went to a friend's house and he pulls out a VHS tape of Song Remains the Same. And we Brian Urbanic's basement, right? We're in there and watch, some horribly remastered footage. But it was just, all of a sudden my eyes were open to a whole new kind of music. So it was Page definitely right up there on the top of that list.
I mean, Jimmy Page, amazing. Eric Clapton, the guitar god, he calls Prince the greatest, but I think most people would probably agree with that, but also say, Eric, don't cut yourself short. You're the greatest or one of them, certainly. Prince, I really enjoy, and we experienced him again last year, and I've seen him like 5 times now, but John Mayer, I think, is one of the best guitarists out there. And when you can have a guy that can, that can perform for 2 hours and only do 1 or 2 of his hits and still be mesmerized by his talent, his guitar playing mostly, and his stage presence, You got something there.
He
So
was on my list too because and it's surprising because if you don't know, if you've never seen John Mayer live, you don't understand this. But once you've seen it's you kind of go, oh wow, he's one of the few guys out there doing this kind of music, and that guy is one amazing guitar player.
yeah, he really is. And when you go to a concert, most of the time you want to hear the hits or a lot of hits, and he doesn't necessarily do that. He relies on his guitar, his musicianship, and everything, and his band. He shares the stage with his band very nicely, and really great. So John Mayer is one of my favorites. And I also wanted to mention probably, certainly one of the top ones of all time. I've only seen him on film, but I have to mention Jimi Hendrix.
Yep. Jimi Hendrix was on my list too, because without Jimi Hendrix, there is no Prince, right?
Yeah.
And he just, he literally lit the guitar on fire.
And Little Richard will say there's no Jimi Hendrix without Little Richard, because Jimi Hendrix actually was an opening act for Little Richard very early in Jimmy's career.
Can you imagine being at that show?
I know. Can you? And of course, I'm wearing the Who, Pete Townsend.
I was gonna ask.
Yeah, I wore this because I was trying to think of what great guitarists, and there are just so many.
Right.
You can go back to even like Randy Rhoads, and once you start, you can never stop. But Pete Townsend is not only a great guitarist, but just so good on stage.
I hope we get a chance to do another Who show at the arenas, because that's just.
I hope.
It is it's another just one of those shows where you're just so appreciative of great rock and roll. Okay, I got a couple to add to that list, because my list was almost exactly the same as yours. But from the country music side, I just want to add Brad Paisley. Now, maybe not the greatest guitarist of all time, right? But if you go see a country music show, you definitely pick up that Brad Paisley loves playing guitar. And I was not a big country music fan the first time I saw him. And I went and I just was like, wow, this guy is one heck of a musician. I was really impressed with Brad Paisley. So I'll just throw that on the table. And then I want to set, there's a special place in my heart for guitar players who are not showy, but for what they do with guitar. And I got two guys in this category, James Taylor.
Okay, yeah.
And Ed Sheeran. Right? Okay. Because James Taylor can come out on stage, and I remember being out at Polaris Amphitheater back in the day, right? And James Taylor is playing with just his guitar, and I've got my back pressed against it was a big empty lawn, and I was a mile back from the stage, but I'm sitting back against the fence, and he can captivate the crowd, right? Yeah. On the same note, Ed Sheeran, it was many years ago, he was opening for Taylor Swift at Nationwide Arena, and he comes on stage with just a guitar, and the arena is filled with 18,000 screaming Taylor Swift fans. And just with his guitar, he was able to use all his little pedals and create this whole like soundscape with just his guitar and everything he could do, and just captivate and hold the audience with that. So again, maybe not the world's greatest guitar players, but people who can captivate a room with a guitar and some live energy.
Well, Ed Sheeran is definitely that, because when we did him when he headlined the two shows at Nationwide, also he did the same thing. So how in the world can you perform to a full arena as a one-man band? And then he did this arena tour, a stadium tour, and I was like, how in the world can you do that? But it wasn't until we saw him at the arena that it was quite clear that Ed Sheeran by himself with his pedals and his guitar could captivate just large crowds like that. And if you mention country music, people, you need to mention Willie Nelson and his beaten up guitar called Trigger that is held together by rubber bands and all that, because he will not use anything. He actually had that guitar hid when he had trouble with the IRS and they were confiscating some of his awards and property. He hid that guitar with his sister so they wouldn't take it, because that is his only guitar. And again, maybe he doesn't, maybe he's not a Jimmy Page or Jimi Hendrix, but the Willie Nelson sound on that guitar, you can tell it's Willie Nelson.
Absolutely. And when you get to see it up close, that thing is beat down.
It is all beat up. It's worn through. Signed by about 100 different artists too.
But it is a great piece of American music history. I'm glad you mentioned that. Hey, we got to talk about real quick, just before we wrap this up, live guitar solos, right? Because when you are at a concert and an artist heads into a guitar solo, it can either be time to go to the bathroom, or one of the true highlights of the concert, depending on what it is. And I'm going to mention one of my favorites before I ask you to, if you have a favorite live concert solo. But it was when AC/DC was at the arena this past time at Nationwide, and Axl Rose was filling in on lead vocals. But Angus went for his guitar solo, right? And it's just, AC/DC, just straight ahead, pure rock. And the guy in front of me decided he was going to record this guitar solo. And he starts, so guitar solo starts, and he's holding his phone, he's recording it. The guitar solo goes 17 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
It was a 17-minute guitar solo. And this guy, he was so committed, he couldn't stop recording because he's like, he was like 6 minutes in, he's like, okay, now I got to get this whole thing. And somehow you could just see his arms like weakening as the solo went along. But I was able to, put my head around him and still enjoy it because it was one of the just an epic rock moment at Nationwide Arena. So any guitar solos really stand out from you from a live show?
Well, yeah, I would say too, and I forgot that I didn't even prep for this because I kind of forgot that was going to be a question. But on record, I love how Jimmy Page plays on Stairway to Heaven.
Oh yeah,
that song gives me chills. And if you saw Heart pay tribute to them at the Kennedy Center Honors a couple years ago, their version of Stairway to Heaven, you're thinking, Heart? Oh my gosh. Heart paying tribute? They were amazing. Check it out again on the Arena Guy Facebook page. But it is so good. And that guitar solo is very cool, me and the Plugs. But I have to say my favorite guitar solo of all time, I already mentioned it, Prince, While My Guitar Gently Weeps, just paying tribute to George Harrison getting inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And that performance is spellbinding. And to me, could possibly be one of the top couple performances of all time.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on that. Great stuff. If you have a favorite we didn't mention, feel free to plug it in the comments below. And before we go, of course, that Red Cross blood drive happening. Arena Guy, do you have those details still there?
May 28th, it's a Thursday. Stop by Nationwide Arena. All the specific details at nationwidearena.com. It's the Red Cross blood drive. It's a time of need. And if you can, please help out and come out to Nationwide Arena. And it's a way that you can contribute during this unprecedented and challenging times.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a special code there you can use, and some cool offers too if you do agree to donate. Again, all those details on nationwidearena.com. Arena Dog.
And the Arena Dog agrees. Please contribute.
Hey, Arena Guy, you mentioned your social a couple times. Where can people find you?
Facebook, The Arena Guy, Twitter, _ The Arena Guy. And I'm always anxious to mention our podcast, The Arena Guy Backstage Podcast with Arena Guy and Dave Rettelberger. It's on YouTube now, the past couple. We haven't done one in a while because of the way of the world, but we're on wherever the audio version, wherever you find your podcast. And I think they're a lot of fun, and the longer versions is what we do here. And I can't wait. I enjoy these and hope we continue doing these, but also can't wait till we do our podcast once again.
Yeah, it'd be great to be back in person again. So
and
don't forget latest concert news. You can always visit schottensteincenter.com, nationwidearena.com, and all our social, Facebook, Twitter, and Insta links are there. And I guess that's it for this week. Next week, we'll have another fun topic. We'll do this again. And Arena Guy, always a pleasure.
All right, and we'll see you then.